Hey everyone, Nigel and Luke here, and welcome to another edition of Crimes of the Week International. If you're a regular viewer of our Crimes of the Week International series, then you'll likely remember that in our previous episode, we brought you a heartbreaking story out of Northern Ireland. It was here that 4 members of the same family were gunned down in a disturbing shooting incident last week. If you recall, the situation began on the morning of Wednesday, July 23rd, when emergency services were called to a home on Drumere Road in the normally quiet village of Maguiresbridge. Officers arrived to find 2 people dead at the scene and 2 others critically injured, one of whom would also later die in hospital. All 4 had sustained gunshot wounds. At the time of our last recording, very limited information was available about the case. However, the names of all of those involved have now been released. We know that the female victim killed in the shooting was 45-year-old Vanessa White, a veterinary surgeon originally from County Clare. The other 2 deceased victims were her children, 14-year-old James and 13-year-old Sarah Rutledge. As for the suspect allegedly responsible for the horrific crime, he has since been identified as 43-year-old Ian Rutledge, Vanessa's husband and the father of the 2 teenage victims. As we stated in our last report, at the time of the incident, Ian Rutledge was taken to the hospital with what was believed to be a self-inflicted gunshot wound. He remained in critical condition for several days. However, on July 28th, it was announced that he had also died from his injuries. Detectives say that they are not seeking anyone else in connection with the investigation. It's believed that Ian killed his wife and 2 children before turning his weapon on himself. So far, authorities have not released a motive behind the shocking triple killing, but they noted that the family had no significant prior contact with police. In the days after the shooting, investigators issued an appeal for information about the movements of a silver Mercedes seen on the evening of July 22nd in the nearby Newton Butler area. They also urged the public not to share speculation or images online, stressing the ongoing sensitivity of the case. At the time of this recording, tributes continue to pour in for the victims. Vanessa White was remembered by colleagues as a respected government vet and devoted mother. Local sports clubs and the children's school, meanwhile, described James and Sarah as kind, energetic, and much-loved members of the community. Candlelight vigils were held in Maguiresbridge and in Bearfield, where the family will be buried together. Police continue to appeal for witnesses or dashcam footage and have asked anyone with relevant information to contact detectives. Authorities in the Indian state of Madhya Pradesh have arrested a man this week after he allegedly killed his live-in partner and her young daughter, then left behind a chilling confession on the wall of their home. The whole thing unfolded in the early morning hours of July 22nd inside a small ground-floor rental unit located in Ganjbasoda, a town in Vidisha district roughly 40 miles northeast of Bhopal. That morning, the landlady of the property made a horrifying discovery when she entered the unit and found 2 people dead, a woman and a child. A second girl, just 7 years old, was sitting beside the bodies. Police were quickly called to the scene, where they identified the victims as 36-year-old Ramsaki Kushwaha and her 3-year-old daughter, Manvi. The surviving child was Ramsaki's eldest daughter, Tanu. According to investigators, all 3 had been living at the address with a man named Anuj Vishwakarma, Ramsaki's live-in partner who went by the alias Raja. Neighbors told police Ramsaki and Vishwakarma had moved in about 2 months earlier and were posing as a married couple. However, shortly after midnight that day, some residents reported hearing a loud argument inside the home. By the time police arrived, Vishwakarma was gone, but the crime scene told them all they needed to know. Disturbingly, a message had been scrawled on the wall in lipstick. It read in part, quote, "She wanted to elope with someone else." Forensic testing confirmed the message had been written shortly after the murders. A post-mortem revealed that both Ramsaki and Manvi had died by strangulation. Investigators also recovered a knife and a set of blood-stained clothes. While the weapon had not been used to kill either victim, its presence suggested Vishwakarma may have contemplated further violence. As for a motive, police believe jealousy and possessiveness were the primary factors. Ramsaki was reportedly estranged from her second husband and had only recently begun a relationship with Vishwakarma. Friends and locals said the couple often fought, but no one suspected the situation would escalate into something this brutal. Vishwakarma was located and arrested not long after the discovery of the bodies. Police were able to trace him through his mobile phone and say he admitted to the killings during questioning. One of the most disturbing details in the case came from the early stages of the investigation, when police learned that after committing the murders, Vishwakarma allegedly remained in the room throughout the night, sitting beside the bodies before finally fleeing at dawn. Due to financial hardship in the family, local officials reportedly had to arrange and cover the cost of Ramsaki and Manvi's cremation. In a statement to police, Ramsaki's father said that she had previously left another abusive relationship and had been desperately trying to rebuild her life. At the time of this recording, Anuj Vishwakarma remains in custody and is now awaiting formal charges. Police in Japan say that they have arrested a Vietnamese national this week after he allegedly forced his way into a home during a robbery and fatally stabbed a woman inside. It happened on the afternoon of Saturday, July 26th, in the city of Imari, located in Saga Prefecture. Around 4:20 p.m., a masked man rang the intercom at the home of 40-year-old Maiko Mukomoto, a Japanese language teacher. When her elderly mother opened the door, the man forced his way in and demanded money. According to investigators, Maiko initially handed over 10,000 yen, roughly $70. But the suspect continued to threaten her, prompting her to give him another 1,000 yen. Despite Maiko's compliance, the man suddenly attacked. Maiko's neck was slashed, and she suffered multiple other stab wounds to her body. Her mother, who was in her 70s, was also stabbed during the struggle. Sadly, Maiko died at the scene. Her mother survived and was hospitalized with serious but non-life-threatening injuries. A neighbor contacted police at 4:30 p.m. after hearing the women's cries for help. When authorities arrived, they launched a full investigation and reviewed surveillance footage from the home's doorbell camera. The video showed a masked man matching the suspect's description standing near the door shortly before the attack. Within hours, police tracked down 24-year-old Dam Dui Kang, a Vietnamese national working in Japan as a technical intern at a local food processing company. He was arrested at his company dormitory, where officers also recovered the blood-stained knife believed to have been used in the attack. Kang reportedly lives with other Vietnamese workers employed under Japan's foreign trainee system. While police have not confirmed whether Kang and Maiko knew each other, the victim's mother told authorities she had never seen Kang before. Investigators say he has refused to answer questions since his arrest. The case has sparked renewed scrutiny of Japan's controversial technical internship program, which was originally designed to transfer skills to workers from developing countries, but has faced criticism over poor working conditions and allegations of exploitation. Kang's employer described him as a serious worker who had never missed a shift or been disciplined. At the time of this recording, the motive is believed to be robbery, although exactly why Kang allegedly resorted to such disturbing violence remains unclear. Legal proceedings are expected to follow, and the investigation remains ongoing. Tributes are pouring in for a father and son this week after they were brutally killed in broad daylight in what police are calling a targeted knife attack. The incident began shortly after 1 p.m. on July 28th, when London Metropolitan Police began receiving emergency calls from residents in the city's Southwark area. Several 999 callers told authorities that they had heard a disturbing commotion coming from a business on Long Lane, not far from London's Tower Bridge. Multiple witnesses said that they had heard a man yelling for help, and that there was at least one person suffering from injuries out in the street. When police responded to the scene, they found 4 men suffering from stab wounds. However, initially it seems it wasn't clear what was going on. One witness later told reporters they saw officers chasing a man who appeared to be injured with a taser as he ran towards a nearby hotel. That man, identified only as a 31-year-old British citizen, was later taken to a hospital with life-threatening injuries, though it's since been revealed that he is now the prime suspect behind the knife attack. While this was happening, emergency responders began tending to the 3 victims of the stabbing. One of these men, who has also not been named, was taken to a local hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. However, sadly, the same couldn't be said for the other 2 victims. The 2 men, father and son, 58-year-old Terry and 27-year-old Brendan McMillan, both died of their injuries. One of them was pronounced dead at the scene, while another passed away after arriving at the hospital. Currently, much of the circumstances surrounding the fatal stabbing attack remains a mystery. Police have not commented on how it started or what the possible motive was. However, they have said that they believe the crime was targeted. They also stated that they do not believe there is any wider threat to the public. In the meantime, Terry and Brendan's friends and family have taken to social media to express their devastation about the sudden and tragic loss. According to loved ones, Terry was a hard-working businessman who had left school with no qualifications, only to work his way up to being the director of a property development and investment company called the Trademark Group. Brendan, meanwhile, was a talented athlete who had played for several professional rugby teams. In addition to playing for the Blackheath Rugby Football Club, he also competed for the Jamaican national rugby team. In a statement, the director of Jamaica Rugby Football Union said in part, quote, "Brendan was a force of nature both on and off the pitch. He was always at the center of all things great with Jamaica Rugby and extremely popular with the players, staff, and supporters. Brendan was well loved within the team and always led by example. You knew when Brendan was around. His big smile, his infectious laugh, and his extreme compassion and kindness towards his teammates." At the time of this recording, the 31-year-old suspect remains in custody, and the investigation into the tragic incident continues. A 33-year-old man is calling on the Australian government to do more for the victims of violent crime this week, after he was recently the target of a terrifying and senseless machete attack, one that left him with awful injuries that he might never fully recover from. The whole thing began on the evening of July 18th, when the man in question, Sarab Anand, went out for what was supposed to be a quick trip to run some errands in Melbourne's Altona Meadows neighborhood. However, after leaving a pharmacy at the Central Square shopping center at around 7:30 p.m., he was targeted by a group of teenagers. Before Sarab could react, the 5 teens had surrounded him and were demanding his phone and other valuables. When he refused, they unleashed a torrent of unhinged violence. After being punched repeatedly and thrown to the ground, the 33-year-old was kicked and beaten by the gang. However, things soon escalated even further when one of the suspects pulled out a machete and began swinging at him. According to Sarab, the teen initially tried to go straight for his neck, meaning that this attack could very easily have been fatal. Sarab was able to get one of his arms up in time to defend himself, but of course, it meant that the blade went there instead. The 33-year-old was hacked at multiple times before the teen attackers finally ran off with his phone. When it was over, he was left with ghastly injuries to his left hand. In an interview with reporters this week, Sarab described the ordeal this way, stating, quote, "My hand in my arm was literally hanging by a thread. There was a lot of blood around me. My clothes were completely drenched in blood. This hand was completely limping, so I tried to support it with my other hand, hoping that it doesn't fall out because I knew the moment my hand drops off, there was no hope for it being restored." Horrifically, this was not the end of Sarab's nightmare. He says that he lay on the footpath outside the shopping complex, writhing in pain and desperately trying to save himself for about half an hour before emergency responders arrived. Because he no longer had his phone, the 33-year-old said that he needed someone else to call for help, but most bystanders simply ignored him until one Good Samaritan finally stepped in and contacted police. Sarab spent over a week in the hospital undergoing multiple surgeries, and though doctors were able to save his left hand, it's unclear how much function he will be able to regain, or if his hand will ever be the same again. Adding insult to injury, Sarab says that he's now been left in a very difficult financial situation. He spent the past 7 years working and living in Australia, but he told reporters during that same interview he's extremely worried about his medical bills. He also explained that he feels like not enough is being done to help support people in his situation, stating, quote, "Someone needs to hear the victims. It is very easy to defend offenders, saying that someone is underage, someone has mental health issues, but what about my mental health right now? Who will take care of me at my home? I'm really scared to get out of my home. I have nowhere to go. You may see me physically present in my home or at the hospital. Mentally, I'm still there, being attacked every night. I don't want to be someone who has just been attacked and forgotten." As for the alleged perpetrators, police say 4 have been arrested and charged, while the 5th is expected to be charged in the coming days. However, it's unclear what will actually happen to the suspects given their ages. The youngest is just 14 years old, and authorities say he was already accused of being involved in a similar knife crime in June. At the time of this recording, the investigation continues. Authorities in Hong Kong are investigating a devastating case this week after a man allegedly killed his wife and 2 young children inside a hotel room before jumping to his death. It all unfolded in the early morning hours of Sunday, July 27th at the Panda Hotel, a popular high-rise accommodation located in Hong Kong's Tsuen Wan district. Police say that just before 5 a.m., hotel staff were alerted to a man who had fallen from one of the building's windows and landed on a podium area below. When officers arrived at the scene, they found the man, identified only by his last name, K, suffering from serious injuries. Though he was initially alert, he lost consciousness shortly after and was rushed to a nearby hospital. He was pronounced dead a short time later. When police went to check the room K had fallen from, they made a horrifying discovery. Inside, they found the bodies of his 36-year-old wife and their 2 sons, ages just 6 and 3. All of them had been fatally attacked with a knife. According to investigators, the mother had suffered slash wounds to her neck and back, while the older child had injuries to his palms, arms, and neck. The youngest was found with wounds to his chest and neck. A blood-stained 10-inch kitchen knife was recovered at the scene, along with additional blood traces on the curtains and furniture. Authorities say there were no indications of forced entry to the hotel room, and that all signs currently point to K being solely responsible. It's now believed that he killed his wife and children before deliberately jumping to his death. What makes the tragedy even more heartbreaking is that the family had reportedly been preparing to move to the UK. According to reports, their visa applications had already been approved, and they were scheduled to fly out the following Monday. However, the trip had been postponed due to the youngest son's recent foot surgery, which had not gone as well as expected. Kay had rented the hotel suite that they were staying in from mid-May through early August in preparation for the move. Friends of the family told police that Kay had recently expressed feelings of hopelessness online, as well as comments that could be interpreted as intentions to harm himself. He had no known history of domestic violence or major financial problems. However, officials believe that mental health struggles, possibly linked to depression and the stress of the family's upcoming move, may have contributed to what happened. Sources also revealed that Kay previously served in several of Hong Kong's law enforcement and emergency services. He joined Customs in 2009, later transferred to the Fire Services Department, then worked as a correctional officer, eventually returning to Customs in 2016 as an inspector. He officially left his post earlier this month, though the details surrounding that are not exactly clear. At the time of this recording, the investigation into the tragedy remains ongoing. Authorities in the Argentine province of Chaco say that a 29-year-old man is successfully in custody this week after he allegedly murdered his former girlfriend, then tried to stage the scene to cover up what he had done, before attempting to flee the country. The investigation began in the early morning hours of July 28th, when police were called to an apartment in the city of Resistencia. It's unclear who initially alerted authorities. However, we do know what they found when they arrived there. Inside one of the units was the body of 24-year-old Erica Almiron Romero. She was lying on her bed and was pronounced dead at the scene. Initially, investigators weren't quite sure what they were dealing with. Upon entering Erica's apartment, officers were hit with the overwhelming smell of gas, which was coming from 4 burners which had been left running unlit on a stove. There was also a tube that had been shoved into Erica's mouth, as well as cleaning chemicals and bleach found near her body. Putting this all together, police had to consider the possibility that she had taken her own life, but the situation didn't stay that way for long. Within hours, they were contacted by the parents of Erica's 29-year-old ex-boyfriend, Joaquin Alfredo Perez. The parents handed over a disturbing handwritten note left by their son, as well as a WhatsApp message that he had left for his mother. The note stated, quote, "I killed Erica. I'm sorry, Mom." An autopsy soon confirmed this. It was determined that Erica had died from strangulation. The murder weapon was apparently a pair of stockings that came from the lingerie store where the 24-year-old worked. Upon launching a search, police discovered that after leaving the confessions for his parents, Perez had boarded a bus headed for the neighboring province of Misiones. That's when they realized that they were in a race against the clock. The bus was specifically bound for the city of Posadas, which is right on the border with Paraguay. Understandably, investigators worried Perez was attempting to flee the country. Thankfully, they were able to locate the bus just in time, and Perez was arrested after being pulled off at a town just outside of Posadas. He now remains in custody and is awaiting murder charges. As for the motive behind the awful crime, nothing has been confirmed, though local media reports state that Erica had recently ended her relationship with Perez after 3 years. 2 months ago, she started seeing someone else, and it's suspected that this is what led Perez to plan the killing. A shocking mass shooting in the heart of one of Bangkok's busiest public markets has left 6 people dead this week, including the gunman, a person who police say was a longtime vendor there with a history of grievances against others at the location. The disturbing incident unfolded at around 1 p.m. on July 28th at the Ortorkor Market, a well-known fresh food hub located in the city's Chatuchak district. The market, which is popular with both locals and tourists, was packed at the time when chaos suddenly erupted. According to police, the attacker was 61-year-old Noy Praidan, a former vendor from Nakhon Ratchasima province who still operated a garlic and shallot stall with his wife. Chilling video footage taken at the scene shows the moments before the awful attack. In the video, Noy can be seen dressed in a black t-shirt and cream-colored shorts, approaching the market carrying a camouflage backpack across his chest. In his right hand is a handgun. Within seconds, he began shooting. Additional footage recorded inside the market captured scenes of panic as terrified shoppers screamed and ran for cover. Witnesses say multiple shots rang out in rapid succession. One woman, who had been shopping for groceries with her sister and boyfriend, told reporters she ducked down in her car after hearing the first volley of gunfire and immediately called police. By the time it was over, 5 people were dead. 4 of them have since been identified as security guards working at the market, while 1 was a female vendor. 2 other vendors were also injured. The suspected gunman then reportedly walked over to a nearby bench, where he turned his weapon on himself. Police say that the first 3 victims, all security guards, were killed on the spot. A 4th guard, with whom Noy allegedly had an ongoing personal dispute, was then targeted specifically. One of Noy's friends, a motorcycle taxi driver stationed outside the market, later confirmed his identity to investigators. He told police that while Noy wasn't known to use drugs or alcohol, his mental health had declined in recent years. The pandemic had severely impacted his income, and growing financial strain, combined with interpersonal problems at the market, had reportedly left him increasingly agitated and depressed. Police also say Noy had previously accused security guards of scratching his car and was known to get into frequent arguments with other vendors, including a neighbor he regularly clashed with. Thailand's national police chief has since ordered a full-scale investigation into the shooting. Understandably, there are concerns that the broad daylight incident could affect tourism, a major part of the country's economy. At the time of this recording, the investigation remains ongoing. Before we wrap up, we'd like to take a second to give a huge shout out to everyone who has made it this far into the video. Seriously, thank you so much for watching. If you found today's upload interesting and informative, we'd be honored if you'd consider liking and subscribing, as well as hitting the notification bell and selecting all notifications to stay up to date with our latest releases. If you're looking for additional ways to help support the channel, we'd love to have you join us over on Patreon. Patrons get ad-free and early access to all of our content, as well as 4 additional stories per week for each of our Crimes of the Week and Crimes of the Week International videos. You can learn more at patreon.com/crimezone, where you'll also find some of the fine folks whose names are currently on screen. All that being said, we understand that not everyone has the means to support financially, and that's totally okay. We appreciate every like, sub, share, and comment that you send our way. Once again, thanks so much everyone, and take care.